First, would you please take the roll?
Representative Alleman.
Present.
Representative Angelos.
Here.
Representative Haroldson.
Here.
Representative Pendergraft.
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Chairman Bear.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. It's good to have everyone back on the committee. So we're a full house today. All right, we're going to start with the re-referral of Senate File 88. And Director Budd, would you please come forward and give us a rundown on Senate File 88, please? And if you didn't get the fiscal note, please make sure you have it up online so you know what we're talking about on the fiscal note. Director, thank you for being
Mr. Chairman, members of
here.
the committee, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I know you're pressed for time, so I'll expedite this, and if you have questions, we can go back and pick those up. There are a number of projects that are in here. We're required by law that if a project gets over $400,000 from the board, that it be come back for approval by the legislature. These are all almost peas in a pod this year. They're very large landscape scale projects. Half of them are dealing with invasive annual grasses. That's per the directive we were given from the legislature a year ago to address that issue. The others are habitat projects on, again, large landscapes. Some of them are 100,000 acres. They bridge all land ownerships and basically are partnerships with game and fish conservation districts and other entities that we work with. Real quickly, I'll flip through these if you'd like. The first is in Thunder Basin. This is a project that will benefit agriculture, ranching industry, also primarily focused at mule deer, sage grouse, and the species up there that are of greatest concern. It includes everything from conifer encroachment that needs to be removed to erosion control, fencing modification, and treatment of native grasslands. Baggs Valley Headwaters is a very similar project. The difference is that this one is in shrubland, sub-mountain shrublands, and it's treating oak, brush, sagebrush, bitterbrush to get that rejuvenated, primarily for mule deer. After the winter that we had 2 years ago, those populations were just pounded. And this is the fourth phase of that project. We're now up over 100,000 total acres, I think, on that one. The third is not a habitat project, or not a broad-scale project. It's the Kemmer 189 migration. This is a federal allocation to fence the highway from Kemmer basically down to the interstate at Evanston, an area where we lose lots and lots of wildlife every year. It also is an area where we have the property damage to vehicular collisions and the potential for loss of human life is a priority. We're required as a state to provide 20% of that grant, and this is the money that was allocated 5 years ago to address that issue. The next is a Wind River Front cheatgrass. This basically is a project that runs from Bull Lake near Crowheart all the way to South Pass. It is a project that is multidisciplinary. We have the tribes involved. We have Bureau of Indian Affairs, BLM, Forest Service, County Weed and Pest, conservation districts, and all those private landowners that are on that front. The next is Seminole-Shirley habitat. It's similar to the one in Thunder Basin. Representative Angelos, you'll remember what we looked at when we were in the field. This is the same thing, it's just growing it out more. Again, the primary focus there is sage grouse, mule deer, antelope, and some of our iconic species. The next is a Northeast Wyoming Invasive Grasses Working Group. This is in Sheridan, Johnson, Campbell, and Crook counties. They work together as a collaborative to prioritize where those treatments need to be done. They've got that mapped and ready to go. So we're ready to get on the ground there probably as early as May. Western Wyoming cheatgrass is the exact same thing. In the western side of the state, this is Teton, Sublette, Lincoln, Uintah, and Sweetwater counties working together. The primary focus area on this one is going to be Lincoln County this year. You'll see they requested $4.8 million. They had funding in some of the counties that they could use up before they got to it, and they agreed collaboratively that the priority was in Lincoln County, so that's where all of this work will be done. The next is the Upper Green Fence. This is an ongoing project to retain migration routes, primarily again for mule deer. Some of these migration routes run from Jackson Hole clear down to Rock Springs. And if they hit a fence that they can't get through, you can imagine the damage that can ensue from that. So it's all been mapped. It's a matter of using collar data and going in and fixing those strategically. It's not replacing fences, although some people would like to have it be something where we replace all their fence. This is where we address the issue where the issue occurs. So it may be a quarter mile of fence, it may be a mile of fence, but it's not the entire fence. Wapiti Habitat is a river project on the Shoshone River in Park County. It's 4 miles of river. It's restoring that river to its proper function, reducing and eliminating erosion, reestablishing wetland habitats, and allowing fish passage on a river which has a species of high concern, obviously the Yellowstone cutthroat trout. And then finally, the Natrona Core Cheatgrass Project is the same as the others. This one is in Natrona and Carbon counties, and it's a project primarily focused on sage grouse habitat, mule deer habitat, and antelope again. All of those being species that we want to keep on the positive side of our ledger. And that's a summary of the projects, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions. A couple things. Reminder that these are not general funds. These are funds that are in the account for this purpose. And we've, as I said a minute ago, some of this was given to us by the legislature. You told us to do a job. We're doing that. The remainder is earnings on the corpus of the trust.
Okay. Questions for the director, Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, look at these slides. I see something I can't decipher. It says leverage. Could you please explain the significance of those numbers?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, thank you for that. Leverage is how much external funding we get for every dollar we spend. So you'll see in there, there's a couple of these that are not really great leverage. They're not really popular type projects, and they're in locations where we don't have that. But you'll see others that we'll get. We average about $5.5 for every dollar we spend across the board in the state. But if you just take the first one, Thunder Basin Habitat, for every dollar that we put in, there's $2.52 coming from other sources.
Other questions for the director? Okay. I have one quick question for you. How much of this $16 million appropriation is from earnings off the fund, and how much of it is prior appropriations for those same purposes that you're using here now?
Mr. Chairman, in this case, we depleted both of those prior appropriations. So there's of the 16 million, about 14 probably is coming from previous allocations.
And do you happen to know off the top of your head how much of that is crossings versus the?
Mr. Chairman,
integration?
the 6 million would be crossings. That would be the remainder of what we had in that account. The other, we allocated, the other 9 million that was allocated, we allocated about 2 of that in the spring funding cycle, and the remainder is in here. So the bulk of that has been picked up by the board. And then all the other projects that are in the portfolio, we had 77 projects we looked at this year and approved, I think, 72, maybe it was 70. All of those were paid totally out of the fund.
Okay. Further questions for the director? Thank you very much for being here and sharing that with us. Is there anybody else here that wants to
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
testify on this particular bill? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and, we don't have anyone online for this, do we? We'll go ahead and close public comment. And I just wanted to tell you, Senator Olson, that I told you would be first after this one, but with the Senator Beitman here, we're going to try to get him taken care of and go with his bill first. So I apologize for that change, but we'll take care of him. He got up here ahead of me. All right, committee, no public comment. We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move to pass by Harrelson, seconded by Smith. And we're not going to go through this bill, but we're going to take a look at this fiscal note. Is there any comments on the fiscal note? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take our vote on this. Ms. Childress, please take the roll.
Roll call vote, Senate File 88 do pass. Representative Allemand? Aye. Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Harrelson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 7 aye.
Thank you. So that will do pass, and TRW will manage that bill on the floor. Mr. President, thank you for coming here today to present your bill. Welcome to House Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a little PTSD from being in front of House Appropriations with an ESG bill, but hopefully this time we'll have a better ending.
I did watch that particular meeting, so hopefully you'll have a different experience
I
today.
hope you guys have a little more class. All right. I bring to you, Mr. Chairman, by the way, for the record, Bo Beitman, Senate District 21, Sheridan County. I bring to you Senate File 191, State Funds, Proxy Voting, and Pecuniary Investments. Mr. Chairman, what we're doing here is, this is about year 3 of my fight against ESG, and actually longer than that, but I think we finally come to a landing place where we've got a bill that accomplishes what I want to accomplish as far as Wyoming voting our shares and protecting our investments, and not necessarily micromanaging our state treasurer's office and overstepping the separation of powers issue that we've had in the past, and trusting in our investment funds people to do the right thing, but also give some sideboards on this proxy voting thing. This is the low-hanging fruit that we can get done this year, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you about the bill.
Please proceed.
States like Wyoming play a crucial role in safeguarding their citizens' financial interests by ensuring that proxy voting, where shareholders vote on corporate matters, is conducted with the sole aim of maximizing financial returns, rather than advancing an environmental, social, and governance objective. This bill is important for the following reasons. Number 1, fiduciary responsibility. The prudent investor rule in Wyoming requires investors to make decisions based solely on pecuniary factors to ensure the highest possible risk-adjusted total net return. Prioritizing ESG factors over financial returns conflicts with this duty, leading to suboptimal investment outcomes. For example, if a fiduciary votes proxies to promote ESG goals that do not align with maximizing shareholder value, they may breach their fiduciary duty. Number 2, economic impact. Emphasizing ESG considerations in proxy voting can lead to divestment from industries vital to our state's economy. In Wyoming, sectors like agriculture, energy, and firearms manufacturing are significant contributors to employment and revenue. ESG-driven divestment from these industries could significantly harm the state's economic well-being and, by extension, our citizens. And number 3, transparency and accountability. Citizens like those who are depending on the Wyoming pension funds have a right to know that their investments are managed with the primary goal of maximizing returns without the influence of external social or political agendas. This bill before you codifies into law the State Treasurer's Office investment policy regarding ESG. And I'll walk you through the bill. The codification begins on page 2, at the bottom of, actually the bottom of page 1, and we're creating a new section, 94722. And this puts in the law what the State Treasurer's Office is doing regarding ESG, and we go on to page, where we talk about proxy voting here. Just basically says that they will do things following the prudent investor rule, and that we will vote our shares. This bill gives our ability, gives the ability of both the pension fund system and the State Treasurer's Office to contract this service out. There are companies that they can hire that will vote our shares in according with our values. So you're getting rid of the deal where there's outfits out there that will vote contrary to our interests. They amass lots of states' interests, pool them together, they vote those shares, and that's how you end up with environmentalist wackos on Exxon's board. And you have a world-renowned beer company with a goofy ad that destroys their brand, and on and on. You've seen all the examples, and I won't go into those. But with that, I'll turn it over to any of these fine gentlemen that can fill in any blanks that I might have missed, but that's my presentation for right now, and I'll stand for any questions.
Vice President Salazar, would you like to opine?
I'll let the treasurer speak.
Okay. Mr. Treasurer, welcome to House Appropriations.
Thank
Please
you, Mr.
tell us your
Chairman.
thoughts on this bill.
State Treasurer Kurt Meyer, and I applaud the effort of the senators and the legislative process in taking into account what we have been doing and how we've been doing it, and they gave us the opportunity to, I guess, share some information with them about what we are doing in proxy voting. And essentially, I think we have one of the leading individuals and companies in Boyer proxy management that has looked at the ISS codes and have probably put in well over 800 different changes in their system. The one that really, I think, tipped the balance for me is that, and this comes right to the fiduciary aspect that the president talked about, is that they're a little quicker than I think anybody else does in the game, that when you have a company that's not performing, is making sure they're holding the board accountable. And I pledged when I was running for office the last time that I was going to take the ESG fight to the boardrooms, and we've been able to do that. And this actually backs up, any other treasurer that happens to get in the office or a slip board that happens to be elected. Then it basically says that no, you're going to stand by the standards that the legislative process is put through and that we've been able to implement. So I think that there's a lot of things that we're looking at. I look at it when I look at what Boyer's protocols are, and it reminds me of what my oath of office was, that I promised to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that's one of the things I think that is foremost in their minds, that they understand the Second Amendment rights, they understand the right to own property and the freedom to basically work in our capitalistic society. They're good, strong protocols that they have, and I think that you guys would, for the most part, agree with them. And the times have changing. The president talked about some of these proxy managers. ISS is one of the largest ones. They actually changed a lot of their protocols as far as having quotas on boards based on non-pecuniary factors. And so things are moving along to where we're really looking at merit-based situations. And I think there's some lines in here that the president put in to actually, he asked me the question about, well, what if we don't have somebody that's as conservative as your outfit? How can we kind of keep these guys in line? And so he's put some parts of the bill in here that talks about merit and performance. And I think that's where we're looking at. There are a lot of folks, especially on the West Coast, that are looking at changing the meaning of fiduciary. And for us, fiduciary means the pecuniary basis, that we're really there to, make money. We have to do it for the benefit of the beneficiaries so that they can, especially in retirement. I sit on the board, I know Dave Swindell is back here. They want to make sure that they can pay their mortgages, put food on the table for their families, and live out the rest of their lives in some modicum degree of certainty. And there's nothing certain about something that doesn't take into the aspects of how much money you're making and what's the highest risk-adjusted return. And looking at other circumstances that have nothing to do with whether or not the beneficiaries or the state or anybody else can pay their bills at the end of the day. So we're going to try to reach I think a situation where we can continue. We do have, I guess I would call them from time to time, gray areas that we've seen. I'll briefly go into one where we had an individual company that was trying to I guess, garner more European funds for the projects that they had in the United States. And so they were catering to that narrative. And that narrative in Europe, as you can imagine, is pretty darn far leaning left and not anywhere near to the values that we have, especially in the area of being a fiduciary, pecuniary basis versus a stakeholder fiduciary. But they had a project that was a coal-fired generation project. And this is where I'm not sure whether the select board members made the right decision or not. They had an egregious ESG statement, but we were making $50 million on a $100 million investment. And at the time before President Trump was elected, that was going to last for 5 years. Now it's going to last till 2039. And we could have, and right now, rather than 50% return, it's 70% return. So, looking at what the decision the select board members meant, this cost us, well over $1 billion in future income. So those are things, we had a discussion with that particular company, asking them to look at what they've got on their website and trying to figure out a methodology where we could do business with them and they could still have their European customers. One of the ways that we might be able to do that is what's called a separately managed account. And in a separately managed account, the governance structure of that management of that account is totally under our control. And that would keep us from having any ESG circumstances in that particular investment. But these are things that are the fine line. And as we move on, we hope to be able to, I think, try to figure out where we can actually get some distance between the European customers of this company and some of the things that they're doing. They got 3 projects that they were standing up, most likely in Wyoming in the next few years. They just sold one of the largest gas-fired plants out in California for $18 billion, so they got a lot of dry powder right now. Not sure whether they need our money, but there's some opportunities there that we need to really look close. And when we do get into those things, I think what I'll do is that I'll talk to the president, talk to you guys, and say, give me a little guidance on this about where you guys think we ought to roll on some of these things. So, because it's a team effort, and I'm glad that we've got this where it's at. I know there's one thing that my chief operating officer, I think, wanted to talk about, and at the proper time, I'd ask him to come up. But we support this bill 100% and support the efforts that you guys have made.
All right, questions for the bringers? Mr. Treasurer, how would you describe this in comparison to the final product on Senate or House Bill 80, where we were trying to get to the ESG issue there? How would you compare these two bills?
I know that this moved a lot toward what this bill is, but I think that you made what I was hoping what they do is start off where the senator was, 2-3 years ago for the House bill. And I think what you pretty much got done, I think, is to end up about where the senator was, several years ago as it came from the Senate. Some improvements, but I think had you started where that left off, I think you'd probably be out almost exact the same spot. That's what I would think. But I think we check all the boxes in this bill that you're trying to get in House Bill 80, especially from the standpoint of our proxies. And that you look at the Boyer proxy statement and what they do and what their guidelines are. There's like I say, there's 900 lines that were changed, but they got a dozen lines that just really go right down where they talk about protecting the debanking of energy, protecting Second Amendment rights, protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, more or less in different areas. And so, they really get into the crux the concerns that we have in ESG. And they do that by, taking the fight to the boardroom. Now, I can tell you that we're not going to win a lot of these fights. And where it is right now is that nobody's winning anything because there's been enough coalition between the State Financial Officers Foundation and there's, I think, 27 states in there. Myself and the auditor are both on that. I would say in 2 or 3 years, we're going to have several $1 trillion worth of assets under management that's being voted, the same way that we're voting our Wyoming shares. And so, I think that, like I said, I don't think there's going to be passed, but I think we're going to put up roadblocks so we'll stop the gravitation towards stakeholder fiduciarism and actually being a fiduciary. That basically came back from the times when the Crusades were on, and all the lords left their property in the hands of somebody, and those were the fiduciaries, some of the first fiduciaries. And essentially, they're supposed to run it just like you would expect it to be run, and that's how we run our shop.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a couple of places in here where it says state treasurer shall vote the shares of investments or use proxy voting. I guess I'm a little curious. If you set up somebody to do the proxy voting, do you then still have, is there a time delay in there where you'd have like a veto override or something
Well,
like that
I
in case your
think
proxy began to wander from where you want it
This
to be?
may be a good
Treasurer?
time to bring up our COO that handles that. And he spent quite a little bit of time on that. I know we had discussed whether or not we needed any extra people to do that. I think that if we get any larger, there's probably a probability that that's going to be all time consuming, and you don't need a person at that salary level doing the job of the proxy voting stuff. So at some point in time, it might be more efficient, to add some personnel, but I didn't want to do it because we've already got positions in there this year. And I think that we can get by until we find out, how this is going to work. Yeah, but I think that we're going to be in fairly good shape, I think, for this next year. We start adding international stocks and things like that. When we figure out how to vote those, more likely than not, when it gets to that complexity, it's going to take another seat.
Ms. Childress, if you wouldn't mind, let's bring Mr. Fleming on in, CFO.
Mr. Chairman, Patrick Fleming is not online.
We'll have, how about Norm LeBlanc, our Chief Operating
Okay.
Officer? And I know that Dave Swindell probably has some of the same questions, I think, that Norm may have, so thank you.
Welcome to, please introduce yourself for the public and give us your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Chairman Bear, members of the commission. My name is Norman LeBlanc, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for the State Treasurer's Office. In answer, if I may, to Representative Pendergraft's question, we have set up a process whereby the proxy advisor provides us with a recommendation. That recommendation flows through automatically to a vote. However, prior to it going to a vote, days prior to it going to a vote, it shows up on a screen that we can see, and at any time we can override that vote and replace it with a vote that we want to have in place. However, if you want that system to work, you are talking about hiring additional bodies, plural. The state of Florida has 10 people who do proxy voting. I don't think we want to go there. I think we've chosen a really very conservative proxy advisor, one that is very well known to the SFOF. My expectation, given the analysis and research that we've done, is that they are going to be very, very well aligned with Wyoming's values.
Further questions? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd probably guide this towards the bringer of the bill. Senator, on page 3, lines 7 through 12, I kind of see this as a little bit as kind of the spine or the backbone of this statement. Can you kind of give me a little bit of an insight of how you came up with that language, and are we for sure covering what needs to be covered?
Senator Biteman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This language is copied directly out of the investment funds policy. This has been vetted, it's been worked through the SLIB, am I not correct, Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, that's correct, and I think one of the operating parts of that is really on line 12, where we say the financial well-being of Wyoming and America. So we reach out a little bit beyond the beneficiaries, and that gives us a little broader scope to entertain some of the things that we feel that if they start becoming a systemic type of a cancer, then we can kind of address those type of things. So, and those are a lot in boardroom votes, and where you may have boards that essentially are not thinking about the company's well-being or the shareholders or the profit, but they're doing solely acting on things that interfere with the profit of the company. And I think that's one of those oil companies that basically BlackRock put a couple of them in there. Was that Chevron or Exxon? Was that Exxon? That was Exxon. And essentially Exxon had this very, very large Southeast Asia chunk of oil property. And they instructed that company to sell that. They sold it to a Chinese oil company, which BlackRock had a substantial percentage of. And so it was kind of a self-serving situation. And I want to let you guys know that everything that we could get out of BlackRock is out. And part of that is because we're doing a better job internally in our quantamental and quantitative analysis group than BlackRock did. And we're getting, well over 100 basis points excess returns over what the BlackRock team was getting. So we pulled out for two reasons. One is with BlackRock, and the other is that we're doing a better job. Now, we still have some privates in there, and they're in the basis of actually taking that private equity fund offline over the next several years because they could not get anybody else to invest with them. We invested in them years ago before the ESG, what I'd say, movement went forward. And so we're divesting of them on a timely, reasonable basis. You don't want to do a fire sale on privates because you can lose anywhere from 25 to 40% of the value in the secondary market. So we're rolling that thing off, so we're maintaining our money. And they've actually, the first couple of years, they did great. They returned 54% over the first 2 years. And we've gotten all of our money back, the capital put in there, and have several $100 million for them to divest.
Further questions? Okay, Mr. Treasurer, maybe the bringer of the bill. Senator, on page 6, in that 7 through 14 section, line 7 to 14, we say may not use more than 1 basis point from annual investment returns, with which invested funds share calculated is proportion to the magnitude of each invested. We've talked about the potential, and maybe this is a question for you, sir, that may we'd need more help to be able to really get into these proxies and ensure that our best interests are covered. Is that going to be sufficient, that funding model right there? Any of you can answer.
Norm and I think Mr. Swindell probably have a position on this that's more of a usual and customary formula in the industry.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc?
Chairman Bear, if I may, this is one of the items that I wanted to address. first off, we want to thank the Senate for working with us to ensure that the best practices that we already had in place remained in place, and so that we could continue to perform well for the citizens of Wyoming. But on page 6, line 8, I think we do need is just a minor clarification so that we get the calculation right to start with. And that is that line 8 should read 1 basis point of assets under management from annual investment returns. So what this does is inserts the words of assets under management between the words point and from. And this is simply a minor clarification that says this is exactly how we're going to do the calculation. I think we interpreted it that way, and I think that others have interpreted that way, but just so that we're completely clear. With regard to whether the 1 basis point is sufficient, the 1 basis point is sufficient so long as we retain a policy whereby our proxy voting manager, a proxy voting advisor provides a recommendation, and it automatically goes through with some light oversight for some votes that we know and we've identified as being particularly sensitive, and then we've gone through. If we stay with that, if we stay with U.S. domestic only, if we do not get involved in a large program to call back securities that are on repo, et cetera, then the 1 basis point is fine to at least start and see how we go. I believe that that would be sufficient. If we begin to talk about anything else, then I think we will need to come back to the table. But let's see how we do with the 1 basis point for the moment.
Mr. LeBlanc, what would be, if we got into foreign investments, what would be the proper number here to deal with that? And ensure that we're not just rubber stamping, but that we're really looking at the recommendation.
Mr. Chairman Bear, I think that I would need to go back and do some analysis on that. I wouldn't want to throw out a general number off the top of my head. I haven't gone through it. I will tell you that the cost of the proxy advisor alone would go probably from something in the vicinity of the 70, 80 grand level to 200, 250 pretty rapidly. Because when you begin to cover the rest of the world, it's a pretty busy place. It's a pretty big place, and there are a lot of votes on a lot of different exchanges.
Just to get a little bit better glimpse into this world of proxy voting, could you tell me, what percentage of these proxy voters fit into the description that both you and the treasurer have shared with us, as far as they match up, they line up with our core values that the treasurer talked about, our oath of office and our values?
Mr. Chair, I did an analysis on last year's votes, starting with votes in the beginning of May all the way through September 12. We analyzed 7,890 votes, if memory serves me correctly, individual votes. We went through and analyzed them, and we analyzed what the position of the ISS borderline policy would recommend versus the Boyer policy. I went through all of those. There were very few that I would have thought would not line up with Wyoming's values. Very, very few. And in fact, the policy that we were running on, which is the ISS borderline policy, in fact, was reasonably aligned as well. We've simply made it even better and even tighter, and we've moved further in that direction. So, it's asymptotic. How much money do you want to spend to get that last 1/4 or 1/10% correct? And at some point, you run into diminishing returns, and I would suggest going beyond Boyer and using them as automatic. You are starting to get very, very low returns for your additional money spent.
Well, thank you for doing that analysis. I appreciate that and sharing with us some of those results. Can you tell us off the top of your head, I won't hold you to it, but roughly what that percentage was that you found that were
I
somewhat
can't off
questionable?
the top of my head, sir, but what I did do is provide some background on why, Boyer would vote in a specific way. We also, just so that you're aware, as sort of a safety net, we do use some proxy voting websites that are designed specifically to encourage ESG believers to vote ESG, and we will look at those. They typically publish from early May for about 8 weeks or 9 weeks, which is the heaviest part of the voting season. And we will look at those, and we will look at those votes and make absolutely sure that we're voting, and we're voting the way that we would expect to vote on those votes. So we do have some additional guardrails in place.
At this point, are there any websites going the other direction which really take into account the pecuniary style of investing?
Chairman Bear, I'm not aware of any that are that are out there that we subscribe to. I think we're best served by looking at those that promote ESG issues, to understand where they're most passionate, to make sure that our vote is counted and is against them.
Very well. Okay, thank you. All right, any further questions? Thank you. Senator Reitman, as far as floor manage on this, should it pass, what is your plan here? I notice we don't have a House representative on the bill.
That's entirely up to you, Mr. Chairman. Any one of your members that heard this testimony today could easily bring this forward. It's a pretty straightforward bill. I could hand over the bill to any one of you guys if you prefer.
All right. Do we have anyone here that wants to testify on this particular bill? I'm going to get the secretary first, and then I'll get right to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think we should. We can do that. Welcome, Mr. Secretary of State, to the House of Appropriations, House Appropriations Committee here.
Well,
House
thank
of
you.
Appropriations, yeah, that's our new name. Please opine on this, this particular bill, Senate File 191.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've taken an interest in the State Loan and Investment Board, and as a former member of the House on stopping ESG, and I think this language, while not as strong as the House version, does do some things that are a step in the right direction, rather than that 25, 30-yard pass we'd like. It's, maybe a 2-yard run, 3-yard run, but it does advance the ball a little bit. I do think the one thing that I think could be added into this is on the proxies, having some notice to the public, and then also the other members of the State Loan and Investment Board on how they're being voted. I've attempted to amend into the State Loan and Investment Board's investment policy statement that the other members of the State Loan and Investment Board would be emailed these proxy votes. And as you know, the State Loan and Investment Board really provides oversight on these matters pursuant to state law, and works with the treasurer on that. And so I think that having that public statement of those proxy votes to the board, and then also codifying, I know they've set up on the treasurer's website now, I guess, a portal for the public to see these, but codifying that, I think, would be very helpful. I've talked to the treasurer a lot, that, I understand that he's changed some of these things, but the reason to codify it is because none of us are going to be in these roles forever. And so I think it's very important that we try to codify notice to the board, and then also to the public on these proxy votes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So go ahead, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, listening to what you just said, looking at page 10 of this bill, The state treasurer shall vote the shares of investments in state funds for use proxy voting in accordance with Wyoming statute. The state treasurer shall compile an annual report which shall include investment income, individual and aggregate gains and losses. Is it possible to incorporate your request for the SLIB board in this, or are you going to need a more frequent notice to be able to keep abreast of what's happening?
Mr. Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of frequency, I think quarterly would be good. I would just create another subsection to deal with proxies, notice on proxies. That's what I would do if, we're not able to do it in committee today. I'm happy to work with the committee on, thinking about language. Obviously, I know you guys can ask LSO, but I think it should be done via another subsection. That's my recommendation. And I think it should be quarterly. Unfortunately, that motion to put it in the IPS failed on a 1-4 vote. I did get an email from the treasurer's office about their new public portal, but I just think, one, codifying that, and then two, having that notice to the board, I think would be very helpful. And providing that just to the board itself, I think would be fine.
Mr. Secretary, do you anticipate your request, this report, to actually have the kind of detail that would show the votes and what the recommended votes were?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see the full report that they have, and I think I'd like it to be more on the comprehensive end, so I think that would be in line with that. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Further questions for the Secretary? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Go ahead, Mr. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. I just want to clarify what we currently do, which is that on a semi-annual basis, every single vote that we make is posted to the treasurer's website. Now, if we want more information there, in terms of what ISS might have recommended or what Boyer might have recommended or something else, we can amend that to do that. However, providing notification in advance to the SLIB, which, by the way, the SLIB does not want and voted 4-1 against, is logistically impossible. We are talking about 10,000 plus votes over a 7 or 8 week period, and we get the recommendations for those votes many times a day or two before the actual vote. So we will have a very, very tight window in which to be able to notify the SLIB with their schedules. I doubt they're really going to be opening that and reading all of those votes. It just is logistically impossible and would make it incredibly difficult to do the job. Now, after the fact, if we want to move from semi-annually to quarterly, that's not a problem. That's easy enough. If we want to add a column or two, as long as we have the data, then that's not an issue. But pre-notification is just logistically impossible. It would be as if we went to the SLIB and said, before we make a single internal trade in our fixed income book, we're going to go and ask the SLIB for permission. It just doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. We have to be able to vote these proxies on a timely basis.
Okay. In just a moment, sir. Anything further?
Nothing further, Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. Mr. Treasurer, I'm going to ask you to come forward here in just a minute. I'll call you in just a second. Mr. Secretary, please continue.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify my request, and I'm happy to look at the amendment to the IPS we proposed, although it's all under the water. But my intent has always been that it's reporting after the fact to the SLIB. And I believe that's what the amendment to the IPS, which was defeated 1-4, said. I'm happy to go back and look at that again, but I've always intended it to be after notice, but I think it should be quarterly. I'd like to see the recommendations. I like that addition. I don't even think my amendment included that. Frankly, I just want to have what they've, since it actually came after the amendment, put clearly on the website, the email that there are changes, that they are going to put it on the website. I'd like to have a procedure where that goes before the SLIB, hopefully in our agenda. And then I'd also like to codify it being on the website as well, moving forward.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for that clarification, okay? Mr. Treasurer, thank you for coming back up. I just wanted to ask you a question about codification. I'd just like to get your take on whether, you think that's a good move for the legislature to codify what you're doing right now.
Well, from, the testimony that Norm just said is that, we have the quarterly data that can be available through ISS without, being charged anymore. I think that's not problematic. We're welcome to do that. I think that anybody that's interested on the SLIB or legislators or whatever can go to our website and look at it. If there's any concerns on how some of these votes that are coming down, we'd like to hear that to see we can fine tune what Boyer is doing. I think Boyer is very responsive to what's going on out in the country and what the states are wanting to do. I mean, I think that's probably the best way to understand how the system works is that you basically have an expert that goes through, thousands of computer code lines and makes these yes/no decisions on different circumstances. And if they're getting something wrong, we'll go ahead and talk to them about it, and we'll run it through the State Financial Officers Foundation. And like I say, there's, I think, 27 states there. The auditor's also on that. And I'm sure if there's something that's going wrong, that we can go with those folks. And then the Boyer representative is at every one of our meetings. And so we can, we have a good personal relationship with them. We can stop by and say, hey, we noticed something, and I think the time to do that is probably, after after the first quarter report, if we see something, we have policy meetings, I think, at least 8 times a year with Zoom meetings with those folks, and we can bring those up. So if the secretary has a concern looking at in the after, we can get almost, I think, a very fast response with Boyer as far as letting them know that there were some concerns. And, that's what we do anyway, so it isn't anything new.
Mr. Treasurer, how often do you update that website? How quickly after the votes are compiled do you get them on your website?
I'll turn that over to Norm, because Norm works with ISS and the Boyer group, has set up the whole thing, so he can probably tell us about what the lag is.
I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Treasurer. I got just a comment question
Sure.
on the website, but Mr. LeBlanc, please.
Chairman Bear, the report on the votes between July 1 and December 31 was on the website by mid-January of this year. We're getting better at using the system, and timeframes are getting tighter, but certainly in the month the month post the votes having taken place.
Okay. I just realized where we're at on the clock, so I'm going to have to table this for now. We'll bring this bill back to finish this conversation, but I'd like to ask you this question so you don't have to come back when we get back together next Wednesday. And Senator Olson, I apologize that we didn't get to your bill today. I'm watching you work. Okay, well, thank you. Not often I'm told that. Mr. Treasurer, my question would be this. When I look at this situation, the suggestion of codifying what you're doing on the website, first of all, let me say that I really appreciate that transparency, and we have been working very hard in this committee to try to create more transparency. Appreciate that you're doing that. I think that's a great effort. But I look at what we've done just this session with the state auditor and the open books, trying to codify that so that we can keep that transparency no matter what should happen in an election in the future. I really see that as a valuable thing, and since we don't have that in the bill now, I think it would be good to put that in the bill. Would you have any heartache at all about codifying what you're already doing on the website?
Let me get this on. Go ahead and codify the quarterly thing. I think that's easy enough to do. you know, I can't say do it within, 2 days after, I mean, what we need to do is get this thing so it's working. At some point in time, we'll know the limits of it, and where we're at as far as how much we're spending, and, make that cost-benefit relation, but what you really try to do, you look at this as a proxy season. You go through, you might be able to get some changes in the middle of it, but more likely than not, you go through the thing like we did the last time, every single vote side by side, and look at every one of them, and then you have that idea about, okay, maybe we need to move a little bit. There's a lot of people, like I say, 27 states talking to Boyer now, and so there's going to be a lot of input. So it's going to be pretty quick if there's something's getting out of line.
What I'd like to do is get with you before we write an amendment so that we can make it work for your department. And what I'd like to think is that, when it's out there for the public, that we got a lot of eyes on it. And if something slips through this system, somebody might be interested enough to let us know that there's something we need to go back and look at. So
Certainly.
that's what I like.
I think that's great. We're going to try to get away from emails. We've got a lot of information on our website, our treasurer's annual conference, all of the performance that comes out, at least on a quarterly, if in some stuff reports monthly, but it's kind of problematic for us to have all that information transparent. And then a lot of people saying, well, can you email that to me, and different things. So if we could stop there and get everything that we can transparent on the website so it's open to everybody. And, and if there's problems navigating the website, let us know. We'll try to get those roadblocks out of it.
Well, I would envision it working through their legislature, those people closest to the people, that if they saw something and wanted to say something or needed more information, that they could work through their legislator. But maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know.
They can always just call the office.
There you go.
Or email me, kurt.meyer@wio.gov, so
right.
we'll get back.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Hopefully you and I can just talk offline about how this amendment should look, and we won't need you and your team to come back here. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned for now. Yes. I don't think we're tabling it, because I don't want to table it. I just want to continue the conversation. If we table it, we'll have to do more work to get it back out and go. So we'll just continue the conversation on Wednesday, giving this team Tuesday morning off, so you're welcome. We're adjourned.